starting to get awake. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'd like to say hello to everyone and welcome. My name is Kathy Bollinger. I'm the Managing Director of York County Community Foundation's Embracing Aging, and we are so excited that you're here today. We are passionate about creating a York County that is inclusive and respectful of all generations. And we find in our work that too often people project shame on growing older, and that's just not okay. So we've designed a series of virtual sessions, 30-minute discussions with people age 50 and older to ask them their thoughts about aging, how they're experiencing it, ask them to share tips and ideas and thoughts and humor and anything and everything about aging to just help us embrace it more, and also to help us become disruptors of negative thinking of aging. So I'm really excited that all of you signed up to be with us today, and of course for our speaker today, who is Sharon Christ. I will announce her a little bit more in a bit, but I want to first share that the session today is being recorded, and a recording of this will be shared on our website and through a blog and through an email blast, which each of you will be receiving in about a week or two. So look for it then. Take a second here to admit somebody, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, Sharon Christ is here today, and I first met Sharon, oh my goodness, a couple years ago. We were working on a program called Leadership for Diverse Schools, where we were helping educators cultivate their leadership skills as well as their bias awareness and diversity skills, all with the purpose of going back into their school districts to create plans to help people become more respectful of differences. So it's just no wonder to me that Sharon was willing to come on and help talk today about her thoughts on aging and addressing ageism. And Sharon has been a great support of our program. She serves on our grant making committee, and she is also someone who coordinated for us an event called Rediscover York, which we held a couple years ago. So we're really appreciative of her time today. Welcome, Sharon. How are you?
I'm great, Kathy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So everyone, what we're going to do, our process for today is we'll have a little bit of a question answer period where I'll pose some questions to Sharon and she'll respond. And then about 20 after 11 or so, we'll open it up. We'll ask you to share your thoughts, your comments, and engage in the conversation with us. You can do that either by unmuting yourself or by using the chat box. So let's go ahead and get started. You know, in Embracing Aging's work, one of the things that we're really working to do is to encourage people of all ages to think about how and where they want to live as they age. So when Sharon said, you know what, I really want to talk about what I would tell my younger self about aging, I was like, well, that sounds like a very intriguing title. So Sharon, tell me, is it important to plan for aging and prepare for it?
In my case, it was. I guess I looked at getting older when I retired. It was sort of closing one door and going on to the other, and I realized that I wasn't prepared. I was not prepared, and I had to stop and think back. Why? I mean, I had watched my parents successfully go through that transition. I had some friends that were a little bit ahead of me that were successful in that transition. So I thought back, and I spent my career actually at Penn State York. And in that role, colleagues and we did numerous workshops with high school students on how to prepare for college. And with my colleagues, we did numerous workshops on how to prepare for your career. And so I kind of stopped and thought, and I said, well, you know, when I look around, we have parents with little ones, you know, 0 to 5 years old, and there's preschool. And so either at home or through preschool, they're preparing to, you know, go into kindergarten and first grade, and they have classes and learning. And then you're in school, formal schooling, K through, you know, 12th grade, and you're being prepared there, you know, the whole time you're learning new skills, you're preparing for life. You know, as you get into high school, it's like, well, what are you going to be when you grow up? And are you going to college? So there are resource people there to help you prepare for when you graduate. So then you graduate, and then you either go to school or you find a job. And if you continue your education, there's people like me and other colleagues that then do all these workshops to prepare you to get a job. And then you get the job, and then you have new colleagues that prepare you to be good at that job, send you to workshops, you know. And then, so then you're working along, and then you get married and have a family, and there's workshops and books and stuff of how do you prepare for family life. And then you reach like 55, 60, 65, and you're going to retire, and you have workshops, at least in my case, you had workshops offered on Medicare, how to apply for Medicare, what to do with your retirement money if you had retirement money, and health benefits maybe, but not how to manage everything else. So for instance, in my case then, I was working one day going 100 bazillion miles an hour, and the next day I woke up and I had nowhere to go. I didn't have to get up and go to the office. And so I had to stop and figure out what I was going to do with that. And it actually, to be honest, took me a while. It took me about a year to get the hang of it.
Wow. You're so right. And, you know, Sharon, one of the things that we keep hearing about in terms of quality of aging is having a sense of purpose. And I hear you, because you have purpose and you're planning, and then all of a sudden you hit that point and it's like, okay, now what am I going to get up and do? What's my sense of purpose? So can you tell us a little bit more about your thoughts around that?
Well, I think you're exactly right. I had colleagues that I still admire to this day, who had it all planned out so that when they retired, they knew where they were moving to, they knew what they were going to get involved with, and they made, in my eyes, a very successful transition. In my case, I very much wrapped my life around my job and probably identified too much with it, and some folks may do that, so that when I retired, that sense of identity or that sense of purpose sort of disappeared. And when you think about it, we have, again, a purpose throughout our years of growing up. You know, your purpose is to learn, to work, to have a successful relationship, whatever that looks like, to raise your family. So there's always a purpose there. And again, I guess my thought is that you go 100 miles per hour focusing on something, and you know exactly, feeling good about it, and we get warm fuzzies from our career and our family, but they're growing up also. So your kids, when you retire, are probably kind of out on their own. So your role as parent kind of changes, your role of employee, a professional changes, and I think you need to redefine your purpose. And if you wait to start thinking about that until the day after you retire, I think it takes a little bit longer to sort of find out what you're going to do with that.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. I think, what was it, in 1900, the average life expectancy, I believe, was 49, and today it's age 79. But they say that on average, if you reach the age of 65, you'll live another 18 to 20 years. And if you reach the age of 85, on average, another 6 or 7 years. So people are living longer, and as a result, retirement is 14, 20, 30 years beyond their working life. And, people are reimagining and wanting to do more in the community and so forth. So what tips do you have for planning beyond retirement? Like, how did you approach this? What did you do that you would like to tell your younger self? And we have a lot of younger people on the call today as well. So what would you like to tell them about tips for planning beyond retirement?
Well, the first thing that I did is I started, all those things that you put on hold when you're, busy working and raising families and stuff. It's like, well, I really like to read, but I barely get through the newspaper in the morning because I have all these other things. So you keep a list of books or magazines or whatever. So you can start doing that. That's a fairly easy thing. Or just take a look at everything you wanted to do, but weren't able to. So I started with that, but I didn't feel that my purpose in life had become reading every book that I wanted to read on my book list. You know, that just wasn't fulfilling. And I took up knitting again, you know, because I used to knit, and then I stopped because, you know, work got in the way and I just didn't have time. So again, no, I didn't think my purpose for the next 20 years or 30 years was going to be knitting scarves and giving them away. So I had to stop. I think people have to kind of take a pause and think about what direction what do you want to do with your time now? ARP, American Association of Retired People, have a great website and do speak to that very thing. And they have some questions that they can ask you and you can kind of work through. One of your options, you know, take a look at your options. For instance, you can keep working if you want to. Perhaps you retired from the job that you had put your blood, sweat, and tears into, but maybe you want to continue working. I had a colleague that went from being a learning center director at Penn State York to being an academic counselor at Millersville full time. She chose to do that. Another again colleague did the same. She went from working in the career development office to being an academic advisor because they had more to give. So they did that. I have colleagues that have chosen to work part-time, going into working in fitness centers or YWCAs and finding satisfaction that way. But kind of picking where you want to go. You know, some of us may have fallen into our career. You know, what might have started out as well, I'm going to try this out and it looks kind of interesting. Such as myself, I moved from Michigan to Pennsylvania and I was going to stay for a year or two, and it's been 40 years and I'm still here. And my job that I took for a year or two became my career. So when you get out of your career, maybe there's another direction you want to go. So perhaps you want to work. Perhaps you think a little bit more about what are your interests and your passions. What are you passionate about that you now want to follow up with? You know, we kind of, and I guess more so than interests and values, but you know, what are your talents, your gifts that you can now, perhaps maybe you weren't using them in your career, that you now want to? You know, maybe some of those days when you were working, it was like, geez, you know, I really wish I could use this part of me. So take stock of your thoughts and what you would like to do and what you can do, and then redirect your energies from where you were. And again, you know, what you always wanted to do but couldn't. You know, I don't want to call it a bucket list, because when you have like 25 years to complete your bucket list, that's a pretty cool thing, but maybe it is a bucket list. I have a friend who, when he retired, he was a great outdoors person. He always wanted to walk the Appalachian Trail. And we used to tease him. It was sort of like, what, you know, isn't that like something you do when you're a little younger? You know, we had a student when I was working that did it, but you know, he was like 20. But he said, no, I want to do it now. And so he did. He walked the entire Appalachian Trail from start to finish in one fell swoop. Started in March and ended in August or something.
Wow.
You know, something you always wanted to do. So let's do it. And again, challenge yourself. I mean, why not? I guess I'd like to think a pretty positive thinking person. So it's like, instead of saying, well, you know, I really can't do that. Why don't you give it a try? It's okay if you maybe don't make it, but it's okay to try. I didn't think I could bicycle the 150-mile Great Allegheny Passage from Cumberland, Maryland to Pittsburgh. And in August I did. It was sort of like, oh my God, you know, how never in my wildest imaginations would I think I could do that. So it's still a time that you just keep challenging yourself. You don't stop. And there's, you know, try something new. I know somebody who always liked to had a great interest in watercolor painting, but thought, you know, I'm not going to do that. Well, he took a class and now he's painting.
Yeah.
It's just, there's like no, I think sometimes we limit ourselves, and I was guilty of that. I just kind of limited myself to my thinking, and then I thought, well, why? I mean, anything is possible. So, and as Kathy knows, and those of you are on that know me well, you know, volunteering, there's no organization or person in the world, I think I can safely say this, that will refuse volunteer help of whatever kind. I've got friends who are very involved when they were working in their church, but took on a tremendously different role when they retired because they had the time. So they were able to step up. I have folks that, you know, had some health problems and ended up getting to know, unfortunately, some people in their local hospital, had such a wonderful experience that now she's a part-time volunteer receptionist at the hospital because she loves to meet people and talks to people, believes in what the hospital does. And so now she's working on that. So it's, you need to keep your options open rather than limiting them and saying, you know, well, I'm sort of done working now, so that's it. Right. And it's not.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Mary put in the chat that she loves the idea of exploring and following your passions, and that's a great idea of any age, and that's certainly true. And I guess, Sharon, I'm going to throw a question in here that, what do you think? Do you think it was the busyness of when you were in your younger decades that kept you from thinking about your older decades? Or like if you had, and I know your talk today is all about, hey, younger self, you know, think about your aging now, but what did you think about when you were younger about older adults? Is that anything you can share? Share with us?
I've chatted with friends about this quite often, actually, because, you know, when I'll just make it I won't say we. When I was younger, you know, when I was like in my 20s, somebody in their 40s looked like ancient. It was like, oh my God. And fairly recently, I don't even know how this started, but I looked up, I think I was having a conversation with somebody about being school age and what your, you know, school was like and your teachers. And for whatever reason, I looked up my 6th grade teacher on, you know, Google's a wonderful thing now. So I looked up my 6th grade teacher who, okay, so 6th grade, you're what, about 12, I guess, 12 years old?
Yeah.
So I was 12. And I thought this guy was like, oh my God, he's like, you know, 100 years old when I was 12. So I looked him up, and when I had him as a 6th grade teacher, that was his first year out of college teaching.
Oh my goodness.
So he was like 22 or 23. And then I read up on him. Well, he taught for a couple of years, and then he had this humongo career, and he got his doctorate, and he was a psychologist, and he was an author, and he traveled. So, you know, I'm sure, and my grandparents, I thought they were like, you know, like way old now. And so that's why I think I'm more cognizant of what, you know, I'm taking a college course now with college students, and you know, they're like in their 20s. I feel like I'm about 80, or they, you know, they think I must be 80. Yesterday we had a conversation about social media. Yeah, right over the edge. But my attitude has changed as I got older. Getting old is a wonderful thing. It's all okay. That wisdom, it feels really good. Feels good.
Well, I want to make certain we have time for questions and comments from our participants today. But before we do that, are there specific resources that helped you discover opportunities in York County that you might want to share with everyone?
I guess I'm a great one for just Googling something and putting words in. And so I did that. And actually the work that I had been involved with on the campus helped me make some decisions, because there was numerous folks on campus that would give student opportunities to volunteer in the community. I knew I didn't want to work for pay again, nor did I have to. All right. Some people need to, and that's completely understandable. Hopefully you'll find something that you can have fun with. The best part of retirement is being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. So it's you know, it's open. So we had taken students to do habitat work on occasion when I was working, and that piqued my interest. So for a year or two, I was doing habitat work, which is pretty cool. Anything you do is pretty cool because you can like leave the job at the end of the day, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to work nights, you don't have to work weekends. So I took my student experiences and worked with those. That's one thing you can do is just Google whatever your interest is, or take a look at what's happening around you. Back in March, when the world shut down because of COVID, I sat in my very comfortable house with my guaranteed retirement income coming in, with enough food on the table, and read about things that were happening around me to people that were losing jobs and stuff. And I felt I had to do something. So I just kind of sat there like, okay, what's a basic thing I could do? Well, you need food. Okay. Everybody needs food. So I went online to the York County Googled food banks, found the York County Food Bank, and I've been volunteering there for a couple days a week. So I think just thinking, just sit and Google something.
Yeah.
So you can do that. There are, so you can volunteer, tons of places to volunteer. And I think Kathy, later at some point, you'll be sending a list of websites to look at.
Yeah, I am going to, Sharon has shared some of her resources, and I certainly want to forward them to everybody. But let's go ahead and open it up to some questions. We have some comments coming in the chat and some questions, and I want to make certain that we're able to have a conversation. So anyone who wants to, please feel free to unmute yourselves and join in the conversation. But let's start with this question from Liz. She's saying, as an older millennial, and then in parentheses, almost 40, the thing that worries me the most is how I am going to pay for it. How do you make sure you have enough to comfortably pursue your passions and maintain your quality of life?
I would go to any and all financial planning workshops that you hear about. And there are a lot of them. I get even just emails still, about them. Start maybe talking with friends, relatives, neighbors, colleagues about reliable folks maybe to go chat with. And I wouldn't just go to one, go to a couple. If you have a retirement plan at your place of employment, see if there's a resource person. You can go there and start chatting about what your retirement's going to look like. Put as much money that you can away for retirement now, whether that be in your 401 or whatever. I started for a very personal reason. In my previous life, when I was married, the first time I learned that my husband was signing my name on all sorts of things, which was making weird promises that we had to pay off. So at that time, my employer had a payroll deduction plan. So I just started having money taken out, and it's amazing. Even the smallest amount will just add up. So do what you can with that. Go to financial planning seminars, and it's still, I assure you, going to feel like you're jumping off of a cliff when you quit working, but it'll work.
And, we have some other comments around that same thing. Don't leave money on the table. Save even a little early on. As soon as you land a job, the compound interest is your friend. Max out 401ks. So, yeah, everyone's agreeing with that as well. And, it was interesting because I was having a conversation with somebody in their 80s a couple weeks ago, and they were saying about that they don't have purpose anymore, and they were struggling with their abilities and just feeling as if they didn't have a purpose. And a purpose can be something as this particular person that I was talking to loves ice cream, absolutely loves ice cream, and loves trying different flavors. So a purpose can be going and getting an ice cream cone, So I know that many of us want to have the means to be able to do the things that we want to do in our retirement. Yet at the same time, there's little things too that can help us have purpose and so forth. We have a comment from Trent: live like nobody else today, so you can live like nobody else tomorrow. Wow, that's great. Another other words, start saving a little now for later in life. So let's open it up. Are there any other questions or comments that people have that haven't been put in the chat box that we can ask? I think that we have a lot of college students maybe from York College on. Are there any students who would like to ask Sharon a question?
Kathy, one thing I didn't mention is that even your friend, the 80-year-old, also look to the family. You know, family dynamics and family units have changed over the years. And you've got, you know, maybe daughters and daughters' families, they're both working, and you've got young ones around and stuff. So I have also found that you find purpose in maybe playing a different role within your family with your sons and daughters or your grandchildren. I've got friends that are basically raising their grandchildren because it's a single parent household. This gal worked, you know, I worked with her for a really long time, and then things happened in her family life that she found her purpose in taking care of her two little ones while her daughter worked. So families often can provide that support too.
That's very true. Thank you, Sharon. So we have a couple more minutes left. Is there anyone else on our discussion here today who would want to share a tip or something that you wish you told your younger self, no matter what age you are? Because even if you're in your low 20s, maybe you wish that you would have told your younger self something at age 5 or 10 as you were growing older. So is there anyone who would like to share any tips?
I have one comment.
Yes.
Hey, hi Sharon. Thanks for everything you had to say. This is Carolyn, and I'm from Story Catchers, and we interview a lot of people to get their life stories. And what comes to mind for me is one question we try and ask every time, and that is, and this is usually people either 70 and older, how old do you feel? And the majority of people say 30. And that's, you could be 87 and they just feel 30 inside. And so I just think it's an interesting way for the younger people, for everybody actually, to think that no matter what somebody looks like or, you know, how they're doing physically, inside, they're still 30 years old and, you know, and have the same desires as everybody else and want to have a purpose. So everything you're saying, you know, it's really true when you ask somebody how old they feel.
It's an interesting comment, because I remember when I was growing up, my mom always acted very young. She was very playful, and there was times, depending what age I was, that I was a little embarrassed about the stuff she did, and then got to enjoy it and never could quite understand it, but you know, enjoyed it as I went on. And now I think I understand it better, because I'm 67 and I probably feel like I'm in my 30s and probably sometimes act like that, and then think back like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that because that looked weird. And I thought, you know what, mom did it, so it's okay. So you're right. You know, I don't know how people take it, but oh well.
Thank you.
Well, that's one of the advantages of getting older. You don't care what other people think. You do what you want to do, and I mean, as long as you're not hurting somebody. But I mean, you know, right. Don't worry about it being silly. Just do it. Enjoy it. Enjoy life.
Yeah, embrace it. Right?
Yes.
I'd just like to say that I love that last comment. I guess maybe that's Joy who said that you care a little bit less. There's actually a technical word for that. It's called a complete identity, that your identity is becoming more complete. You know yourself, and as you know yourself better, then it makes less difference what others think. So in our society, we tend to think about some of the losses that come with age, or the negatives of age more frequently than the positives. But that sense of freedom that comes with a more complete identity is certainly one of the upswings or benefits of growing older.
Wow.
Indeed.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, our 30 minutes flew by so quickly today.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody. We do have one more question here in the chat, so let me see if I can get this one. The question about having enough money is a tricky one. If you figure in a scenario that involves bad health, few people will be able to save enough to be sure. So a different perspective to go with your priorities, and if money runs out, it runs out, scary but necessary. So also health is wealth, protect it. So the importance of protecting our health and taking care of ourselves as well. So yes, thank you so much for sharing that, Glenn. So as I mentioned, our 30 minutes went by quickly today. I want to thank everybody for investing your time. I know that it's valuable to you, and we so appreciate you spending 30 minutes with us. Sharon, oh my goodness, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We greatly appreciate it. I want to remind everybody that you can visit www.embracingaging.org. You can learn more about our campaign to disrupt negative thinking on aging. And at the bottom of that page is our events calendar. Our next virtual session is coming up in November. It is, oh, I lost my notes here. Just give me it's November 5th. Excuse me, I wanted to find the date. November 5th at 1 o'clock. It is with Randy Friedman. It is called The Upside of Aging. And Randy is going to help us or share with us how she thinks that some things are even easier and better as she ages, and help us think about how the power of the two-letter word no can transform aging. So please join us for that. And again, thank you, everybody, and look for a recording of this on our website and through an e-blast, which you'll all be receiving in about 2 weeks. Thank you. Take care.